Marisol. Marisol, September 2069. Marisol needed to acclimate. At the gym, she jogged on the treadmill with a weight belt. She was breathing a bit heavy but felt strong. She was on Sol 10 of her program. One of the luckiest ones. As the surface rockets to Hellas Planitia only flew bi-weekly, her arrival timing was just right to miss the last rocket, giving her almost 2 weeks in Waterloo to do nothing but explore and exercise. The exercise itself wasn't overly strenuous. She'd been so diligent about the workouts during the 9-month flight, even with all the challenges of doing it while weightless. She did an hour of cardio every day on the treadmill with bungee cords pulling her down, and an hour of strength training on the resistance machine. She was determined to stay fit and strong so she could stay long term. She had already passed the first health check. People who had too much bone loss upon arrival were routed back to the rockets headed back to Earth, before the flight window closed for 18 months. She could scarcely imagine the disappointment of that. Now she had to keep her max VO2 and bone density levels high enough to make sure she wouldn't be sorted into a single-circuit 18-month internship. She wanted to be on one of the big projects, which were minimum 3-year commitments. The more challenging part was just learning to walk with a normal gait in 1/3 gravity. Marisol knew she still looked like the fresh recruit she was, with her telltale wide-legged bouncy gait through Waterloo Square. Soon she'd get better control and motor memory, and would look like she was strolling along on Earth. The acclimation period was heady for everyone, though. Most people with their retained Earth muscle mass had tons of energy on first landing. She felt like she could fly. In fact, she had taken up playing Mars ball in pickup games in the square, something she never would have considered at home. The rules were pretty much like basketball, but on Mars, even fairly sturdy American girls could dunk. Well, could at least pull up on the rim of the basket, which was a decent amount of athleticism for the Vasquez family. 5 miles in, she decided to call it. Enough for one morning. She had some housekeeping waiting at home. As she was finishing and cooling off, a message came through on her watch. Yeneris. Marisol had a quick pang of loneliness, but was quickly buoyed by her mom's face and voice. How are you, Mija? I hope you're having a great time. I can't wait to hear your project assignment. Everything's good here. The bots have been harvesting all week, so we're going to start the crush soon. I have to say, I'm not sure about this year's crop. It won't be our best vintage, that's for sure. Mr. Atkinson doesn't care that much, though. He doesn't even get the wine out as gifts anymore, since he stopped drinking it himself. The vineyard's just a write-off on his taxes and some pretty landscaping, so I've been donating the wine to the neighborhood food co-op. I'm sure he'll be furious when he finds out, so everything's the same is what I'm saying. Jesse seems to be hanging in there okay, but I'm worried about this boy, Marisol. You know I've always cared about him, and he's had a couple of rough breaks. But you need to focus on your future. He's in so far over his head. I don't want you to get hurt. I tried to ask him about applying to the Austin Training Center yesterday, and he's still not giving me a straight answer. I can't figure out what's keeping him in that awful house. I hope he'll be able to sell it, but I think there's a problem there. Is he telling you what's going on? I wanted to tell you that I took your advice and I checked out Applied Viticulture. You're right. I think I'd be a fit for a lot of jobs there. I still don't know about this Mars business, Marisol, but if my only baby is going to be there, I think I should think about it. The Atkinsons are getting pretty old. I think they might want to sell the house, so they're so uninterested in the vineyard now. I really would like to get down to just one job as well. The property and house management work is so stressful and thankless. So I applied to the mega vineyard like you suggested. I am sorry to hear the wine tastes like rancid grape juice. Perhaps I could help with that. I applied to ATC at the same time. I think my M1 visa has to come through before I can get in, but I'll keep you posted. I love you, Mija. Marisol was overjoyed to hear that Yeneris was serious about moving. Oh, it was such a great opportunity for the pair of them. Yeneris got to California long after it was an immigrant's dream, and having a daughter on her own didn't make it easier to get ahead. Even with a master's degree in oenology from UC Davis. Mars didn't have any class structures yet, and was nothing but wide open space and creative people with big ideas. Marisol couldn't understand why any bright young person would want to be anywhere else. After showering at the gym, she put on new clothes, a pair of Mars-cut jeans slung low on the hip with a full break for that slim and elongated Mars body, along with a new bamboo t-shirt with gorgeous beading at the collar and waist. Glass and glass beads were everywhere on Mars, along with little local gemstones. There was a lot of intricate beadwork in much of Mars fashion, produced by the automated machines that ran absolutely everything. Marisol thought she recalled that Velma Patel had pioneered tiny beaded hems along with everything else she did, but she wasn't sure. She laced up her new trainers with thin soles that were nearly like ballet soles, optimized for easy and frequent machine washing to wash away the toxic dust, and not for bearing lots of weight as on Earth. Outside the gym, she turned to the blue solar sidewalk and started towards home. There was a mini rover just ahead, spraying the sidewalks with a fine mist of water, and the wildflowers planted along the curb equally. The massive dome overhead was especially warm and bright today, and the songbirds, legal only here in Waterloo Square and not allowed for import anywhere else, were in full melody. She took a detour through the public orchard and grabbed a Meyer lemon and orange. The square itself was starting to fill with the morning crowd, some sitting in the amplified sunlight and reading, others on the Mars ball courts, and a few determined souls diving into the Olympic-sized lap pool. The buildings surrounding, all 5 stories tall, had complex poured shapes and were dominated by huge stained glass windows that refracted slivers of brightly colored lights through the open space. Everything about Waterloo felt like unconstrained creativity. In the evenings, Marisol found herself sleeping deep and dreamless after every day of relentless newness. Almost to her apartment building, suddenly a siren wailed, and a voice was booming from speakers that were installed on each building. Safety alert. Please proceed to the nearest life shelter. Safety alert. Please proceed to the nearest life shelter. The lights inside the square dimmed, making the bright white lighted arrows that appeared on the blue sidewalks much more visible. The crowd started moving along the sidewalks in the direction of the arrows. Marisol had no idea what to do. There was mention of safety alerts during her Waterloo intake, but she'd been so overwhelmed by it all she'd only paid a little attention to that bit. She just followed the arrows in a section of the crowd and tried to stay calm. Probably just a drill. After a minute or so of shuffling along with the crowd, Marisol found herself ushered with others into Jolene's, the diner directly across from her apartment. It was styled to look like a farmhouse with a front porch, and inside you could order eggs, grits, and salads. Through the back was an area that was supposed to be a big backyard with an artificial turf and picnics and a chicken coop, and lots of raised beds full of vegetables. Jolene's had its own mini dome of Metashield inside the larger dome of the whole square, and so it doubled as an emergency shelter. Marisol crowded to the back and managed to find the small end of a picnic bench to sit on. The crowd continued to push in as the siren wailed, until finally a woman Marisol guessed was Jolene shouted, "All full," and a heavy door swung shut out front. The crowd was packed fairly tight, but it was orderly. Marisol noticed the chickens flying free inside the dome, another good tidbit to tell Jessie later. She found she was preoccupied with the comments from her mother about Jessie, even under the circumstances. Surely he was applying to ATC. He was coming. The siren had stopped, which was a relief. But a tiny rover was now driving through the crowd, saying, "Please check in. Retinal or fingerprint scan. Please check in." It shuffled from person to person, scanning and making a ding as each person was recognized in the database. Finally, it got to Marisol. "Retinal scan?" Marisol looked right at its raised sensor. "Thank you. Marisol Vasquez. Are you aware of anyone else who might be missing or need assistance?" "No." "Thank you. Please sit tight." It moved on to the next person, and about half an hour later, finally there was an announcement over the speakers again. "Thank you for your cooperation. All souls present and accounted for. This was only a drill. If this had been a real emergency, you would have had enough supplies at your emergency location to survive up to a week. Please remember to travel everywhere with your medications and your ID. Thank you and have a good day." The heavy front doors swung open and people began to pour outside into the sunny Waterloo morning. The music was playing again in the restaurant before Marisol could even get out. The 3D printer was droning away on the counter, which is why she didn't hear Jessie's message when it first arrived. Marisol was wearing a respirator with a small backpack and a big pair of glasses with a detailed HUD. She was vacuuming debris out of the inside of the farming allotment. The allotment was an open cave with UV lights, minimally separated from the other farming allotments between apartments by thin screens, and with a central water, basic life support, and good solar shielding. After a while, she finished tidying up and hung up the vac. and walked in the door to the apartment, kicking it shut behind her. She took off the gloves and dropped them in a laundry basket, and then took off her respirator. A panel next to the door said sealed, and there was an audible ding. Marisol was hurrying, but the audible ding, ding, ding picked up as she turned on the water in the kitchen sink and began washing her hands. After 20 seconds exactly, it stopped. She finished washing up and glanced at the active wall. Her active wall was busy. She thought that was a sign of a creative mind. Yenaris and Jesse called it a mess. She had a life-size Christmas tree image up on the left side of the wall, even though it was September, and a menu open next to it for navigating ornaments and other decorations. She had a picture window frame on the upper right, which could show any view of 1,000 cameras in the system, but which was currently showing a view of about a kilometer away right now. She had dozens of boxes for open pages and videos. She was playing a playlist pretty loud, but in the background, faintly, one of the videos was still droning on about forecasts for population growth of Waterloo in the next year, and the various government agencies that would find themselves called into action. Somewhere in the lower right-hand corner, near where her backpack usually actually covered the wall, was her blinking notifications icon. She finally noticed it and swiped it open, and there was Jesse with the deformed ring. He was holding it up against the meta shield, where it fused together for a minute, and, as he pulled it away, she saw the softened metal cool and then harden. She walked over and touched the video so the audio output would shift focus, and she listened to Jesse. So I was curious what the heck would do that, because Metis isn't supposed to react with anything, right? I mean, I wonder if something's going wrong with my shield, and it's about to electrocute me in my sleep, you know? So I looked it up, and the company's like, there's no way that could happen. What do you think? Should I be worried about this? Marisol quickly seized on a detail. The melted ring looked like the cooling weave of Metis shield that was in the new higher orientation video Marisol watched this morning. She rummaged around on the screen near the lower left of the window and flicked a couple of windows closed till she found the video. She watched it again and stopped when the metal began to cool. The colored strands in the Metis arranged themselves in gentle uniform waves in red, green, gold color order, just like Jesse's ring face. She recorded a response. You know, I'm starting to believe you that this is made of Metis. How wild is that? If that ring is from a black market Metis jeweler and Danny didn't know? Amazing, Jesse. He was always up to something. If that's true, don't show it around too much. Ha! Who knows why he'd have one? I thought those rings and chains were used to move Metis illegally to China. She attempted to attach the video and send, but she got a warning on screen from Brouhaha Security, and she was reminded that she was not to share the video outside the company. Right, of course, that video didn't seem that sensitive, but it was all Brouhaha's property, and they were famously unyielding about that. Marisol did not want to get in trouble at her new job. On the other hand, she also wanted to make sure that Jesse knew it really looked like Metis, so he'd think twice about whatever consequences there might be for selling it. And so she took a screenshot of the melting ring and emailed that to Jesse with the message. See, it really looks like it has the melting signature. Another ding. The 3D printer was done. She took the cake and carried it to the door of the pantry and walked into the small dark room, glowing with red light. There were many plants growing in pots on shelves. She set the cake on the tray next to 3 others that were starting to sprout small mushrooms. On the tray below, a fully mature cake with mushrooms. Marisol took that one and left the pantry room again, popping it into the microwave and pulling a plate out of the refrigerator with a pre-cut salad already in one of its pre-molded compartments. She took a jar of sauce from the fridge and set the table, along with a glass of sparkling water with ice. The microwave dinged and she put the warmed mushroom cake on her plate and sat down to eat, swiping her tablet. After she finished dinner, she rinsed her plate and put it in the dishwasher. Marisol climbed into her bed. She pulled the rectangle of light that was the window closer, setting a strong, warm sunlight to come in over her right shoulder while she browsed her tablet. The sun was setting outside, helping to keep her body attuned to the circadian rhythms. Another message from Jesse. It's a mystery for sure. Maybe Henry found a Metis meteorite. That would make this thing valuable, right? Tell me more about Mars. Distract me from how awful this all is. I can't believe you live inside a giant cliffside complex. Is there just the sound of giant sucking air machines all the time? Is everything the future? Quick message back. It really is. I'm flying out to HQ tomorrow for 2 weeks of immersion there, and then I'm back here to keep working on the soil labs. I can't believe I have to leave my tomatoes that long. My neighbor says she'll check on them, but I'm still worried. I'll be back before harvest, though. Everyone here is so nice, Jesse. You're going to love it. Marisol was last to board the short-range transport rocket to Hellas Planitia. She had to walk over the last row, already reclined, hair still wet and dripping, to take the last seat in the middle of the back row. Awkwardly, the security atlas was approaching down the aisle, or in other words, from the top of the rocket on down, and soon as she swung downward from a crouch to her back, asked her to provide her bag for an out-of-order security inspection. Marisol heaved herself back up, using a couple of anchor bars to a standing position where she could pull her bag back out of the storage compartment. She handed it to the robot, looking studiously over its shoulder and away from its blank face at the girl behind it and above, Tilda. Tilda turned and smiled at her and then looked forward again. The Atlas pulled out her metal lunch pail and opened it and said mechanically, "No food," before dumping it in a trash receptacle and returning it to the bag. Marisol tried to grab the cakes and yelped, "Hey!" which got her another amused glance from Tilda. The Atlas finished the inspection, re-zipped the bag, and handed it back to Marisol, while delivering an audio message about corporate non-liability and at your own risk, etc. Marisol snatched it away and stowed it in a compartment, secured the hatch, and swung back down into her seat. Tilda turned sideways in her chair, enough that she could look down towards Marisol. She looked like she was cracking up. "That was close, Mar. What baking project was worth nearly missing your ride to work? I was dying for another batch of those mushroom cakes after 3 days of nothing but noodles, but they didn't finish until this morning. You're the only person who came to Mars for the food." "That's not true. I also came for the unparalleled customer service." Marisol was staring daggers at the Atlas, and Tilda was laughing so hard her seat was rattling. The countdown and takeoff were reassuringly bureaucratic. Marisol hoped she was projecting the bored air of a regular commuter, like the Brouhaha employees she saw in the rows ahead. They all wore the same uniform, a simple polyblend jumpsuit in black and white booties for easy dust identification. They carried just a small bag of essentials with them for their month in the field, but each of them were reading on a haha book made with Miss Velma's IoT paper. Less eye strain for consuming the news of the day or versus other screens, an ultimate signifier of techie cool. Company men and women, every one. Marisol activated the window porthole as soon as they took off and saw through the screen projection the rotation of the horizon as they nosed over and headed east. The gentle dunes below were streaked with rover tracks, and she could see a few of the tiny vehicles driving around a large mining operation. Waterloo was continuously expanding in the bottom of Valles Marineris, but as the temperature continued to rise each year, developers were starting to work on zones on the sunnier cliff tops. A patch of mossy green was spreading on the ground below. Marisol had read about the first greenery spotted on Mars, outside a Metis dome structure, when she was in high school, and it was the main catalyst for her choice of degree and that she was here at all. The entire breakthrough had taken years, including cultivating an extremophile mycorrhizae. I don't do mushrooms. I should read a lot about mushrooms. That could extract nutrients from Martian rocks to laddering by being consumed by lichen, which was then fed a mossy ground cover. The regolith where the first plants were found growing in the wild has been treated with bacteria that consumed perchlorate and aerated the dirt. Now that was becoming an established overall technique to remediate large tracts of land to something that may eventually turn into soil. Marisol hoped that she and Jesse could get the money together soon for a homestead not too far from Waterloo Center, hopefully near the newly forming Lake Candor, and eventually with lots of rolling green hills. Mycorrhizae. Thank you. Upon landing at Hellas Planitia, the captain made a brief announcement. "Welcome to Brouhaha HQ. Remember, at all times you are on private property and subject to the absolute authority of the Brouhaha Corporation, under Earth's international maritime law or the prima facie law that you are outside any other jurisdiction. While we welcome your visit, our safety and security are our primary concern. Please do not share sensitive information from this site with anyone, and please do not enter under any unauthorized areas. We appreciate your cooperation. Please excuse the short delay while our rover docks with us. Have a nice day." There was silence at the harsh tone from the captain. The interior lights came on bright, like a splash of cold water in the face. and that somehow roused the slightly stunned brouhaha interns into action. Their seats swung 90 degrees, and, once upright, they took turns unbuckling and descending to the steep stairs at the bottom of the rocket, where they descended one more flight into a large rover. Each of those seated about 20, so 6 rovers waited in queue behind the first to drive beneath the rocket and dock with the hatch on the underside. Marisol couldn't help straining to try and see the Metis fields as the rover drove the short distance from the rocket to the brouhaha intake lobby, but there was a tall white sheet installed along the entire roadway. Tilda grabbed the back of her shirt playfully. "Hey, didn't you watch the orientation video? It's too bright to look at in the sunlight. You'll go blind. Don't worry, we'll get to see it on a moonlight tour this week." At the intake lobby, they waited briefly while utility bots sprayed the rover tires and wiped the floor of any dust. Then they emerged one by one through the hatch and down the stairs. Inside, there were rows of big upholstered chairs with plenty of space between. Tilda and Marisol chose 2 towards the center and dropped their bags, stood stretching for a few moments after the hours spent cramped in the rocket. It was the most spacious room Marisol had seen yet on Mars, with ceilings over 50 feet and an overall gymnasium feel. The outer walls were all made of smart glass, with the one facing the Metis fields turned fully opaque white. Still, that entire wall glowed with a warm light from the gleaming metal terrain beyond. The wall opposite was clear glass, giving them a window into the hive of operations inside. People and bots were moving from place to place, and there were long rows of benches with equipment and various technicians working. Marisol couldn't wait to get inside. There was a huge rectangle of Metis shield hanging like a flag from the rafters, with the brouhaha logo rotating slowly in the center. Presently, the screen changed to show a huge version of Velma Patel herself, radiant in a beaded shift, and with her signature opaque blue contact lenses. "Welcome to Brouhaha. I hope you'll enjoy your time here. You have made your journey at an important time in our history. We are about to celebrate 10,000 souls into the human epoch on Mars. When I launched Mama Phi in Earth Year 2042, it was my hope that we would become a fully self-sufficient society within 50 vernal equinox years. We're 1/3 of the way through that timeline and progressing faster than I could have imagined. I hope that your eyes are open to the beauty and the promise of this precious land, and that you will share my mission to restore it to the vibrant wonderland it once was." The video continued to show stock video of locations on Mars where water was starting to flow, plants were beginning to grow, and Metis shield domes were being erected, interspersed with graphs showing temperature rise, atmospheric pressure, and air quality indices. A new voice, a pleasant man on screen. "Please take your seats and relax. They recline if you wish, or can be fully extended to flat and lowered to the floor for exercises or sleeping. While you wait, please access the audio for various video feeds on the wall by connecting to the guest Metis service. You will be processed through security, decontamination, and intake one by one. This process may take up to 4 hours for everyone. Food and drinks are available at the back of the room along with restrooms. We hope you have a pleasant stay." Tilda and Marisol shared a look and shrugged, and then went about configuring their chairs as cushioned mats on the floor. Marisol put in her earpods and tapped to connect to the guest Metis. Then she gestured to the yoga instructor on the left-hand video wall and started picking up her audio instruction. "Now let's bend and walk the hands forward into downward dog." Marisol pushed through the routine, making faces at Tilda as they did headstands. She thought fondly of years attending classes with Yeneris, never managing to achieve a headstand. Her mom was going to be amazed at all of the new abilities everyone seemed to have here. After a while, she investigated the food options and came back to their seats with 2 steaming bowls of noodles with seaweed and protein chunks. Delicious. Tilda tossed her a Snickers bar that she'd been hoarding with the rest of her stash from Earth. "Here, don't forget what real food tastes like." Marisol was scandalized. "How'd you get this past the atlases on the rocket? You know you can't bring food in." "I know, so eat it. I'm afraid to break any more rules here. That captain's speech when we got here was intense, right? They might toss me out an airlock." Marisol laughed, but she did sneak a glance around for any prying eyes before tearing into the chocolate bar. Marisol Vasquez. She nearly choked in her panic to hide the wrapper, cramming it into Tilda's hand. "Here." She shot Tilda a murderous look and grabbed her bag and hustled over to the kindly woman holding open the interior door. "Take your time, dear. Let's head over to intake." In the intake room, a man at a desk motioned for her to take a seat across from him. Meanwhile, his colleague took her bag to a separate table and unpacked it carefully. "Have you brought any plants, animals, or food from Waterloo or from Earth?" "No." Are you aware that all plants, animals, and food from Earth may create runaway invasive propagation of potentially harmful bacteria? Yes. Are you aware that any infraction of Brouhaha Corp rules may result in immediate termination of your employment and deportation to Waterloo and possibly deportation to Earth? Yes. Great. Welcome to paradise. Marisol grabbed her repacked bag and walked briskly into the next room, which turned out to be decontamination showers. After bagging her clothes and shoes for laundry, she took a shower and donned her newly issued sweats and boots. Finally, she gathered her things and walked through the exit door into a bright courtyard under a large dome of metis shield. The habitats were on the far side, beyond sand volleyball, a series of plunge pools with signs indicating a wide range of temperatures, a small orchard, definitely planted first at any new Martian development, she noted, picnic tables with a few scattered couples and singletons sitting, and a Mars ball court. From the court, please tell me you play Mars ball. Marisol double-checked to make sure the guy holding the ball was talking to her. She pointed to herself. Yes, you. I'm about to have to take these two down, 1-on-2, and that was making Zosia weird. Darius, manners. An owlish-looking woman with very pale legs beneath her athletic shorts stepped towards her and waved. Are you Tilda? No, she's coming. I'm Marisol. Oh, yes, great. I'm Zosia Broder. I'm your team lead for most things, not just Marsball. Yes, please meet Darius and Xavier. They're on our team too, along with Tilda. And yes, please go drop your things and come join us. Maybe Tilda can tap me out when she gets here. She smiled broadly. You know what? I'll just see you at dinner. Zosia, how have you not been deported for bone loss yet? Please come back here and get some cardio and a little functional training. Darius gave her a stern look. Honestly, okay. I'm just really not sure about this sport. I think I'm going to hit myself in the face with that ball. You try maintaining all this enthusiasm for 2 hours a day of exercise in year 3 on Mars. Tilda had a huge grin as she approached Marisol's table with her dinner tray. I was hoping you were here already. What do you think the after dinner activity is? It's just for Broder's group. I was asking Kim and Colin, and they're going back to play cards. Marisol continued to marvel at Tilda's ability to make herself and everyone around her at home nearly immediately. It already felt like they were a team that had worked together for ages, and that was largely Tilda's familiarity with everyone. She was really the ideal person to befriend when embarking on a long, strange trip on a faraway planet. I have absolutely no idea. It does seem like they keep peeling us off from the group. I wonder why that is. Marisol almost cracked a joke about their group being sent home, but she held back. Yesterday, 2 candidates, one whom she'd never met because he never made it out of the dorms to activities, and one, Sam, that she only briefly saw when he was complaining loudly about the food and accommodations, had boarded a surface rocket back to Waterloo. Apparently there was still time to catch a rocket back to Earth before the window closed for 18 months. Marisol tried not to think about the financial implications of that. She knew that they were forfeiting their jobs, which means that they were also on the hook for the round-trip rocket flight from Earth. That was enough money to buy a house back home, a nice one. Maybe they had trust funds or something, or maybe they were just going to be broke forever. But that was a heck of an expensive 3-week vacation on Mars, and 18 months in flight round-trip. Grim. Marisol redoubled her resolve to make the most of whatever this opportunity was going to be. Whatever it is, I just hope there's beer. I'm craving carbs all the time. Tilda laughed. Okay, you hobbit, we'll find a way to keep your steady stream of calories going. As they were bussing their trays, Marisol spotted Zosia in the corner by the door. Zosia caught her eye and motioned for her to grab Tilda and follow her out. Out in the hallway, there was a waiting rover. Zosia, Marisol, and Tilda got in, and Darius and Xavier were already inside. They pulled away and drove down the hallway to a door that said "Do not enter," which opened automatically for them, and into a darker, narrow hallway. The electric motor made a cartoonish zoom noise as they raced in the dark, and Marisol just closed her eyes for parts of it, as it seemed they were going to hit the sidewall at any time. Gradually, her eyes adjusted, and she noticed that the walls were glowing slightly and were polished smooth. They were driving through a tunnel of metis. They were in the metis field. After a few more minutes, she could see a pinprick of light in the distance. Zosia wasn't saying anything, but she was smiling a bit, so the rest of them just sat in quiet anticipation. The light grew larger until they were at the mouth of the tunnel, and the rover crested over a lip of metal into the rough metal surface, overlooking the very end of the sunset, the sky a deep navy blue. They were inside a huge bubble of metis shield over a section of the field. The rover came to a stop, and Zosia grabbed one of the ox packs hanging from a hook on the back of the row of seats, slinging it over her shoulders and adjusting the cannula at her nose. Okay, team, suit up. The weather outside is breezy and a bit chilly, in nice contrast to the warm metal ground. Pressure is pleasant. Bit oxygen deprived out there, though. You'll want to top up with the ox packs. Once everyone was ready, Zosia opened the door and they all stepped out onto the surface. Marisol was in awe. The metal was cooling after a day under the sun, and it warmed her feet until they were almost too hot. The wind howled through the flapping Metis shield dome. Zosia finally spoke. Okay, team. Well, first of all, welcome to the real Metis field tour. Only a very select group of people ever get this close to the Metis itself. That's probably because the processing of Metis into Metis shield, which happens to be in these portable factory buildings you see out here, is a closely guarded trade secret of the Brouhaha Corporation. It's my great pleasure to inform you all that you've been hired into an elite team at Brouhaha. In a few moments, we'll enter the manufacturing center behind you, and I'll explain more about how Metis is processed and what your actual role will be. First, though, I must stress from this moment forward, everything about your job here, including your new positions, is strictly confidential. I'll cut to the chase. The processing of Metis involves mycology. Velma has taken great pains to keep that information and the details you're about to learn a trade secret. We have the galaxy's only known deposit of Metis, and the best way for us to protect this resource is to ensure that no one else could use it if they stole it. Okay, all good, let's head inside. Marisol was trying to catch Tilda's attention as they entered the building, but no luck. An elite team at Brouhaha? Inside, there was the familiar musty scent of fungi. Through light pipes in the ceiling and some UV lighting, a long table with a central shallow water tray was lit. There were mossy pieces of wood in the water, and huge mycelium spread over the surface. Mushrooms of at least 2 varieties were growing. At the end of the table, there was a tray of pulverized glitter, with the end of the mycelium mat partially covering. The mat was absorbing the glitter and forming a woven structure that Marisol recognized as a crude prototype of a sheet of Metis shield. Velma was working on the soil health in her original compound here. Right here, beneath this section of what is now the Metis field. She says it was accidental that she discovered that the mycorrhizae she was studying turned out to be able to consume shavings from her experiments with Metis. Most would-be competitors assume that we've identified a new low-energy method of processing Metis into long threads that are somehow chemically treated and woven. The truth is much more organic. Metis shield is grown here, symbiotic with this fungus. We have a lot more work to do to optimize this process so we can reduce cost and cover all of Mars in Metis shield. And that's where you all come in. Welcome to Brouhaha R&D Engineering. Jesse, so much is happening. It's all incredible. I'm not allowed to talk about much of it, though. The only bad thing is I won't be in Waterloo for a while. The company moved my stuff out here back to HQ for the time being. I hope that by the time you get here, they'll let me move back. It's a bit isolated out here. I love my team, though, and I'm having so much fun, Jesse. How are you? When will you get here? All right.